I'll just go ahead and open it up for you guys if you have any questions. I assume you may.
The governor, her office says that she's going to pursue Medicaid work requirements without getting the legislature's approval through a bill. What do you think of that, given that the House was not passed that policy?
I think that there'd be interest within the House with this new administration at the federal level. Some of the reasons over the last few years that we haven't done it, we knew that we probably wouldn't get approval through the federal level. It's something we'll look forward to working with the governor on. Something we may even be willing to consider as well as legislation, unless the governor is able to do it without it. But I think it'd still be something we'd want to have on our as a potential opportunity.
The governor threw her support behind the hands-free driving bill. We saw a lot of applause for that. I guess, what do you make of that and the prospects for pushing that forward this year?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that the governor brought that up as one of the topics. It's something that here in the legislature and in the House we've made multiple attempts, multiple different versions. I can say for me personally, I've kind of moved into a position of if we can do something in a responsible way and look at what some other states have done to find a balance, I think it's something that I would be supportive of and expect to have that conversation this session.
I know you all have laid out lowering property taxes as one of your priorities. Were you disappointed to hear that wasn't something she laid out together for the state?
No, I've had conversations with the governor's office about it. I think that she's looking forward, and in my conversations with her, she's looking forward to see what the legislature would be proposing. I think it's similar to what we're looking at. To put just one bill together would be very hard on the issue of property tax. So I think that's why she's looking forward to working with the legislature to see what opportunities are out there. I don't think that means she doesn't have interest in doing something. She just knows that, like we do, it's a very complex, complicated issue that may take a couple different versions.
How would you expect your office's involvement, I guess, as conversations continue on property taxes?
Well, I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, we have to have the support of the governor, but we expect to fully engage with her and her office as well as other stakeholders. I think you're going to see us bringing in all the stakeholders. We've already had some preliminary meetings, but having some more public meetings when it comes to property taxes to get everyone's input on all sides of the issue and try to reach some level of conclusion on that. But again, I'm not surprised that it wasn't in the speech. That doesn't mean I don't think that means the governor's not supportive. It just, we know there's not just one bill sitting out there that's the right solution at this point.
Mr. Speaker,
I'll go you next, Stephen.
Do you have some initial thoughts on the governor's proposal related to cell phones in school districts, kind of calling on school districts to pass them?
In my conversations with the members as well as back home in the district, and I've been pretty clear, I think, and the governor laid out today what I was hoping would be the expectation, is setting that minimum level of standard. I think she touched on other districts are utilizing and going further, and some further than others and not as far, but having that minimum standard, I agree with her that that is the route that we should go, and I think that's something that we'll be able to see support for in the House. Go ahead, Stephen.
The governor talked about kind of getting creative with preschool and child care providers, incentivizing them to kind of integrate services, get kids from one place to the other. To me, that dovetails with some of the concerns you laid out about the impact of expanding preschool on child care providers. What are you hoping to see happen with those two segments?
Yeah, and I think the governor thinking about it, one of the challenges that we faced is also before school and after school as well, and some of the models that she's looking at. And what I'm excited about is we continue to be willing to try new things. We haven't just settled on one solution and said this is what we're going to do. So I'm excited to hear more about, obviously I need to hear more about what she proposed today, but it sounds like they put a tremendous amount of effort into child care, which obviously ties into the workforce issue. So I'm looking forward to see what that model may look like.
What are your initial thoughts on the Medicaid reimbursement ideas?
I got to come a little closer, I'm sorry.
What are your initial thoughts on the Medicaid reimbursement ideas the governor proposed? Doula coverage, allowing higher Medicaid reimbursement for midwives and so on.
Well, I think we know that we have that issue, especially in rural Iowa, and I'm excited to see that the governor, again, back to kind of how I answered Stephen's question, is willing to consider some new ways of trying to tackle the issue. I think that's it's very forward-thinking for the governor. It seems like in her speeches she tries to be forward-thinking for the state. So we have a lot of reimbursement rates that I think we'll need to be reviewing. But I think if we can get OB care out in rural Iowa, we're going to have a lot of conversations back home in our districts. And I think that's something that we would be interested in engaging in. Yeah. Yeah, and it was said, but I know it's kind of loud in here. But what I would say, I won't predict what the level of support would be, but I think the governor, bringing it up in her condition of the state speech, probably amplifies the issue even more so than some of the attempts that we've made in the past. I would be supportive of us having that conversation. There's some other states that have some models that I think we could consider on that issue. Good?
Last
right,
year, you all didn't pass the unemployment tax cuts. Do you think this is the year that you're going to do that?
Again, I think it falls into a similar category, something the governor has laid out. I want to look at, see those numbers and make sure that the fund stays sustainable long term, whatever we're doing on tax cuts. That's driven the House Republicans' decisions that we've made. I'm assuming that those numbers are obviously correct, and as we look at those, dig into them, as long as the fund can maintain sustainability, if it's one more thing we can provide for being competitive as a state, I think it's something we should consider.
Can I ask you about something?
All right, I'll give you last one, Stephen. Here he goes. Got to jump in.
Not in the governor's speech. Not in the governor's speech, but one of your colleagues in the Senate would like Iowa to buy the 9 southern counties of Minnesota and annex them into the state. What do you think of that proposal?
I look forward to having that conversation. Anytime we can continue to grow Iowa, it's something we should at least engage in. And I think you're actually seeing in some other states some similar legislation being discussed. But at this point, I haven't spent enough time looking at the bill, but more than happy to take a look.
Speaker, do you want to comment at all on the cancer, the $1 million allocated to cancer research?
Yeah, I like what the governor's trying to do. We have a world-class hospital in the University of Iowa, and if we can find ways to partnership with an issue like she laid out there, I think that's something that the legislature should definitely consider. Obviously, we need to learn more about how that partnership would work, but with a $1 million investment that the governor's asking for, I think it's something we would definitely consider. So, thanks, guys.